I've been asked before, why do you care so much about Dylan Mulvaney? After all, he hasn't committed any crimes. He hasn't incited violence against anyone. He's annoying, sure, but that isn't a crime. Why focus on Dylan instead of other feminist topics? Firstly, I have talked about a myriad of feminist topics, ranging from kinks to motherhood to religion. I am capable of discussing many issues under the purview of women's liberation, and unfortunately, trans ideology is a major modern roadblock to achieving that, especially in modern countries. Trans ideology has permeated not just our culture, but legislation and government as well.
Now, let's talk a little bit about Dylan Mulvaney. You know, he's the one who single-handedly destroyed Bud Light's image and cost its parent company billions. Well, they want misgendering to be illegal. I just said they. He wants misgendering to be illegal.
Articles written about me using he pronouns and calling me a man over and over again. And I feel like that should be illegal. I don't know. That's just bad journalism.
Well, there you go. Said in such a gentle, friendly manner, but the message is quite sinister, that if someone misgenders him, according to him, then that should be illegal. That means the cops show up to you.
Then what happens?
And you're charged.
What, charged,
go to
fined?
court,
You go to jail?
Fined. Maybe you go to jail. Maybe the fines, you won't learn from the fines.
So
Maybe
is that what we face now, Rita?
Well, that's the very casual, friendly, nice way he put it, but the message is very sinister. The way it was communicated was very gentle indeed.
The redefinition of women to include anyone who identifies as such has led to many changes that impact women's safety, rights, and fairness in sports and academia. Gender identity has superseded sex in law in the United States, as well as in many other Western countries. As Kara Dansky wrote in The Abolition of Sex, within hours of taking the oath of office, President Biden signed an executive order preventing and combating discrimination on the basis of gender identity or sexual orientation, known as Executive Order 13988. The executive order established that it is the official policy of the Biden-Harris administration that sex is to be defined to include gender identity, i.e., that sex is to be interpreted by all federal agencies in a manner that ignores sex. The order directed all federal agencies to redefine sex to include gender identity throughout federal administrative law. The impact of this legislation has been widespread, ranging from the inclusion of males and female sports categories to the inability to remove men from single-sex spaces by redefining sex to include the nebulous gender identity. It becomes impossible to retain protections based on sex.
I dare you to try and stop me from going into a women's bathroom. I dare you to try and stop a transgender woman in my presence from using the bathroom. It will be the last mistake you ever make. As far as what's between my legs, you're going to have to pay for that information.
And although some like to pretend that women are treated equally to men and no longer face oppression, or that patriarchy is something that only occurs in those other countries, this is sadly not the case. For example, in Spain, several men have used gender identity laws to gain access to women's shelters where their victims reside. As reported on Redux, in a letter issued to the Minister of Equality, Ana Davila Ponce de Leon Municio detailed her concerns about the safety of female victims of violence was at risk due to Spain's progressive approach towards gender identity. In her letter, issued March 18th, Minister Davila Ponce de Leon noted that she had become aware of 6 cases in the autonomous region of Madrid where men charged with violence against women had changed their legal gender identity, a process that was streamlined and made significantly easier following the enactment of Spain's trans law in 2023. In addition to updating the registered sex, 3 of the men made requests to stay in women's shelters with the wives and children who had been escaping from them. So far, concerned staff at the shelters have blocked their access, but may be violating the nation's gender discrimination laws as a result. But perhaps most disturbingly, an abuser changing his legal sex has a tremendous impact on the resources the victims are able to access. In one of the cases recently highlighted by El Mundo, a female victim of sexual assault was stripped of the special protection provided for victims of physical and sexual abuse because officials told her that her aggressor, who drugged and raped her in front of her young daughter, was no longer registered as a man, but as a woman. In Spain, special gender-based violence charges exist, providing female victims of male violence specific protections and resolutions which can impact divorce or separation proceedings, custody, and other important factors. Victims of gender-based violence can also access special protections intended to ensure that they are safe from their male abuser. Because a female cannot be convicted of gender-based violence, male abusers who change their legal sex can avoid this charge and deny their female victims of those legal protections. Around the world, women have been arrested for misgendering, which is deemed a hate crime. Interestingly, misogynistic language is not deemed a hate crime, and yet we've seen Kate Scotto, a 38-year-old mother, be detained for misgendering a man on Twitter, leading to her arrest, the confiscation of her phone and laptop, an injunction against her, preventing her from accurately referring to a male as a sex, and according to her, I was arrested in my home by 3 officers, with my autistic 10-year-old daughter and breastfed 20-month-old son present. I was then detained for 7 hours in a cell with no sanitary products, which I said I needed, before being interviewed, then later released under investigation. I was arrested for harassment and malicious communications because I called someone out and misgendered them on Twitter. In Norway, Tonje Jevison, a lesbian filmmaker and actress, was informed on November 17th of 2023 that she was under investigation for saying that a man cannot be a lesbian due to a 2020 amendment to the country's penal code that added gender identity and gender expression under protected categories from hate speech. People found guilty of hate speech face a fine or up to 1 year in prison for private remarks, and a maximum of 3 years for public remarks. In 2021, Marian Miller, a 55-year-old feminist and mother of 6, had her life turned upside down because she posted a photo of a suffragette-colored bow tied around a tree on social media. She was charged under the 2003 Communications Act after a group of trans activists reported the image to police, ludicrously claiming that it represented a noose. The police said this constituted threatening or abusive behavior towards trans people. For this, Miller faced the prospect of 6 months in prison, until eventually the proceedings against her were dropped. Sports, a notoriously difficult field for women to pursue professionally due to limited sponsorships and low wages, has been infiltrated by men seeking recognition, attention, and prizes. From Laurel Hubbard to Leah Thomas, sports of all kinds have been seen victories by men over women, and any protesters are shut down with claims of transphobia, simply for pointing out the truth that men, even with suppressed testosterone, hold advantages over women due to physiological differences that hormone therapy cannot change.
5 transgender players dominated a women's college volleyball game in Canada.
Coach, why are you playing male players?
I'm not.
Well, they are. They're male. They're biological males. Why are you doing that? What happened to chivalry?
It's not that in my room.
Huh?
Male-born athletes were on both teams, 3 on Seneca and 2 on Centennial. Each of them reportedly stayed on the court for the entire game, while the biological females were getting on and off the bench. Seneca College, the team with more trans players, ended up winning the best of 5 series.
One study of 98 trans women showed that while levels in trans women dropped to below former male levels, almost all participants had testosterone levels that were above the average female range. The researchers note that although testosterone levels in males peak between their late teens and early 20s, many of the physiological changes that benefit trans women in sports have been set in stone before then. While such results represent a marked decrease in performance, the running times of the trans women group remain significantly higher than those of the biological women, despite prolonged estrogen therapy. The athletic advantage of previous testosterone exposure can be put down to more muscle mass, longer limbs, a narrow pelvis, and differences in lung and oxygen capacity. Additionally, there is a large wage gap in pay for the sports themselves. The wage gap is seen in almost every sport played by men and women. For example, the average salary earned for a WNBA player is $71,635, while the average NBA player gets paid $500,082,180 a year. Many women playing in the WNBA have noticed this problem and started fighting for women to get paid equally. Another sport that the wage gap is seen a lot is soccer. In this sport, the United States women's national team is highly successful and won the World Cup in 2015. When they won, they were awarded $2 million afterwards. It's for this reason that many female athletes rely on sponsorships to make ends meet and are held to high expectations, such as continuing to play even while pregnant. When Dylan Mulvaney received sponsorships from Nike, despite not being an athlete or athletic at all, it became apparent even to those who are not up to date with trans topics that a double standard was at play. Dylan matters because he's an example of how even the most benign attempt at so-called womanhood remains misogynistic and impacts women as a class. It highlights the double standard between actual women and men who identify as women. After all, no woman would be rewarded for defining herself via sexist stereotypes on social media with a trip to meet the president. No female non-athlete will receive sponsorship from Nike. No woman on a journey of self-discovery via fashion and TV-produced troops of womanhood would be celebrated with a commemorative beer can with her face on it. No woman without massive achievement would be crowned Woman of the Year just for being a woman. It is because he is male that Dylan has been able to fail upwards and to avoid criticism of his regressive brand. His critics are all disavowed as conservative bigots, and despite the monetary losses he incurred for Nike and Bud Light, he continues to make money off of his brand of Days of Girlhood. That is worthy of critique. That is worthy of discussion. It is important to accurately refer to his sex when doing so to illustrate both the double standard and the reality of this phenomenon. There is no female equivalent to Dylan who makes videos about days of boyhood, reduced down to anger issues and masturbation, and who gets applauded for it by actual men. No woman would be celebrated for doing this, and no woman would ever get as far as he did without any actual talent or work to get there. And that is why, even though he isn't doing much more than prancing around like an idiot who thinks women are Stepford wives or Barbie dolls, he still deserves to be criticized. This, dear viewers, is where we part. I can't find the comment that I initially read that sparked this topic, but I thought it was worth stating. In the same vein that I've made comments on why we still discuss the bathroom, or why I don't use preferred pronouns, I think it's good to at least say, hey, I criticize Dylan not because I just enjoy being a hater. I mean, I do enjoy being a hater about, like, the new iteration of Transformers or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But I'm not doing this because, I just hate seeing a guy live his life. It's because no woman would be treated like this. The misogyny is evident from the way that he views womanhood, to the creation of his brand, to how he succeeded where no woman would have in his shoes. Anyhow, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!